You are watching Gouche Live Aussie style. We have a great show. This young man didn't make our last week show. We were with Joey MacDougall and, of course, Jamie Woodman. We had a great talk about obviously what's going on in Australia in terms of ice hockey. And we found out from Joey and Jamie they've had this kind of roller coaster of a year. And we'll be talking with Jonathon Bremner just in a few minutes, of course, all about the same situation. They're all three players in three different parts of the country, and Melbourne has been sent back into a lockdown, and we'll be talking to him about that. Listen, don't forget, Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. Yes, it is. It is a new show brought to you by Fired Up Network. Kerry Rivard has done a great job in organizing this. It's called Concussed. It's after the book that we wrote with Keith Primo. We will be talking about obviously the issues with concussions. It is understanding the invisible injury. Do not forget, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you will see the new program on Fired Up Network. And of course, Gouche Live Productions will also be bringing it to you live. We'll be bringing you experts from around the world, not only in Canada, US, but also in Australia. Some of the great doctors that we work with, Dr. Michael Brooklyn, of course, in Sydney. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here he is in his new pad somewhere in Adelaide. Traps.
How are you, Gooch? I thought, considering we've got Dr. Jonathon Bremner coming on, I'd just go down to the local doctor's office and do it live from there, roving live for Gooch Live, as always, the best, only the best here on the Gooch Network.
But you're not serious. When I looked at it, I saw some crayons. I thought it was a kids class.
That's the cute corner. It's the only part of a doctor's office I'm allowed to touch, the crayons and the toys.
And that's and a lollipop. Hey, listen, obviously we're going to be talking a little bit about ice hockey. As you know, right behind me, the 2022 Ice Hockey Classic called The Rivalry will happen here in Toronto. And I've just confirmed a couple of players that have been involved with the Ice Hockey Classic will be joining us. Zenon Konopka, coming out of retirement, the captain of Team USA several times in Australia. He will be playing again for Team USA, being the captain. And of course, Michael Bud, I can't even say his name. Michael Budd will be joining us also 5 times to the Ice Hockey Classic, one of the leading scorers for the Team USA. Michael will be joining us. And then Kevin Noble will be jumping on a flight on the Thursday to get here. And what we're doing is on the Thursday, Friday, Traps, we're actually having a showcase. We've got junior players, pro players that are going to join us on Thursday and Friday. They'll be put through a series of skills, and we will be picking out of that 5 players that will be added to the roster for the Ice Hockey Classic 2022. First starting out in Queenstown, hopefully the outdoor game. And of course, we'll be going to Adelaide, Sydney, and of course, Melbourne. But that's all if we get rid of this thing called COVID.
Can you hear me, Gooch? Because my screen's gone.
I see you. Your lips ain't moving, and you've got that incredible podcast smile right at this moment. So it's pretty exciting.
I'm not sure what's going on there. Maybe drop me back out and bring me back in, or maybe drop me out and bring the proper guest back in.
We will do that, no question. Well, that's what it is. It's the God saying, for God's sakes, get rid of these two. Bring up the doctor. The doctor.
The doctor's in the house.
I just want to state that, as you know, the rivalry is coming. It's August 21st. It will be live broadcast on the net to Australia. We start at 10 o'clock at night. It'll be roughly, I think, 10, 11. I'm not sure what time it is over there, but it'll be there, obviously, because ice hockey's been shut down. We'll have a lot of great players. We're going to have a lot of guys from the OHL, obviously the AHL, and most importantly, a bunch of the college teams. So we're pretty excited about that. Hey, listen, talking about ice hockey, this is a good one. He's not only a great hockey player, not only a great ambassador, but he's also a doctor, Jonathon Bremner. Jonathon, how are you?
I'm good, guys. I'm not a doctor. I'm not sure where you get this narrative
I don't
from.
know. That's coming from Traps.
I'm in that field, but certainly not.
You look like a doctor. Well, you know what it is? You look more like an actor right now. You look like McDreamy from, I can't remember the name of the show. Listen,
I'll take that.
We had you on probably a month ago, and obviously things have changed again. And we wanted to get you on, obviously, with Joey and Jamie. We're the 3Js. We're talking about all the things that are happening in ice hockey over there, of course. Talk to us a little bit about, before we get into all the things that you're doing now, but as an ice hockey player, talk to us about what it's like to be having these pivots of, this ebb and flow, like the trials and tribulations of this thing. For a guy like you, who loves the game, it's got to be very frustrating.
Yeah, it is. I think Melbourne's probably had it worse than the other states to this point. You're trying to get some kind of training schedule going and prepare for a series that we were supposed to have against Melbourne, Derby series, and it can't go ahead with, we keep getting interrupted by lockdowns and COVID outbreaks, and it's been really frustrating. I think Sydney are really going through something similar to what we did last year, but Perth has been able to remain relatively intact, I think, with their local schedule. So it's definitely frustrating, and we want to play the game, we want to prepare for these games, and we're just not able to. Being an indoor sport, it tends to be the last thing that is, restrictions are lifted on is the indoor sports. So it makes it even worse.
So I think we've got Sammy back. Sammy, you were there? Or are you still floating?
I am. No, I'm all good.
I've heard how COVID is over there. Hey, listen, Robert Wine is joining us all the way from Ottawa. Big supporter. I guess you can read his Australian lingo here. I think he goes on the internet and finds it for us.
On. Yeah, I'm able to show off my fluent Aussie lingo for you all to see. Bloody oath, mate.
I'll tell you what, Jonathan, if you knew Robert Wine, he is a special character. This young man was actually hit by a car. The driver fell asleep. There were 5 of them. It's called the Canada 5. And he was, they gave him about a 50% chance to live. Has come through hell and all waters. And I'll tell you what, he's become a very dear friend of mine. He's an inspiration, and he just gets in it. So he's doing the lingo in German when I do my German show. He does the English show while he talks English. And here he is on the net trying to figure out all that Aussie stuff. And again, it's putting another shrimp on the bobby. And listen, I want to say good morning to Aaron Kuzak. Thank you for joining us, buddy. Always love your show. What's happening? It's a great show. I have to wake up really early, so I don't do it that often. And Barry Shelley, want to say hello. I miss watching the Melbourne Mustangs each week on the YouTube. Can't wait until they start back. Barry Shelley is down in the States in Cooperstown. Jonathan, I don't know if you know what Cooperstown is, but it's the home of the Baseball Hall of Fame, and he's a big Mustangs fan. And Barry, Jonathan plays for the Ice, so I'm not sure how that's all going to work out. Talk to us about that. You played for Perth, Scott. An incredible organization. Perth is just one of my favorite cities, but it's way too far away to ever go to. And now you're in the Melbourne Ice organization, a great one of the storied franchise. That transition in 2019, walk us through that.
Well, it was sort of part hockey and part my professional life, really. I was looking around for work in Sydney and Melbourne. I had a lot of my close friends who have left Perth to go work in Sydney, and I wanted to make that move and experience living interstate. So I was talking to a couple of different clubs at the time, and Melbourne were I was lucky to have them reach out and say that they wanted me to come over. And I was also offered a job, as I mentioned to you last time, with AstraZeneca. So it kind of fell into place perfectly. So I was able to go over, accept the job with Astra, and walk straight onto the Melbourne Ice. And it worked out really well. It was obviously different moving away from my family for the first time, but it was something I was excited to do and I had my mind set on. So looking back on it now, it's probably one of the best moves I've made. I wouldn't change a thing with how it's gone. And obviously moving to a club like the Melbourne Ice has been really, really fortunate for me as well. I mean, while we had on-ice challenges last year, we're talking 2019 now, it was great to be a part of a big club and remain a part of that big club. It's just that we're not playing any games right now. So all positive things about the move from Perth to Melbourne, and still enjoying my life here, even though we're not playing hockey at the moment.
Jono, let's get back to the mispronunciation or the where I went wrong with some detours on your professional career. You missed last week's show. The boys were pretty rough on you. I had you back the whole way through. If you watch the replay, you'll see I had you back. The boys were in you, but I had you.
Thank you.
You're in surgery last week. Can you explain what you're doing for AstraZeneca at the moment, or what you're doing outside of that, if there's something else?
A couple of months ago now, so I'm not with Astra anymore. I'm working for a company who do surgical implants, so upper and lower limb mostly, talking shoulder replacements, wrist plates, ankle plates for fractures and things like that. So I'm basically in theatre every now and then. It's a big component of the role, working with scrub nurses and surgeons to effectively use the equipment that we provide and make sure the patients are getting the best outcomes.
So we really can get Gouche back his magic hands then. So there's hope.
Well, hang on a sec here. I don't think I need any of my hands fixed. I do need a new hip, a new couple of knees. I broke a couple of ankles. I hope you got something for them. You can make me the bionic man. Well, listen, born and raised in Perth, obviously a beautiful city, as I mentioned earlier. Now transitioning, obviously in Melbourne, you mentioned that, you've kind of left your family there. Talk to us about the feelings right now, obviously with the confusion with obviously what's going on in Australia. We've come through it, as you know, right now. We've gone through our waves, and at this particular moment, it looks better, even though we've had a spike over the last 3 days with the new variant. What is it like over in the Melbourne story? Because we know with Aaron Kuzak, you're on, you're off, you're on, you're off. And I know you probably know NFL football. It's almost like you're a quarterback in the NFL where you got to pivot and look where all these attackers are coming on. Talk to us about the transition right now with you.
Well, I think it's just the way. I'd be interested to know, Gouche, what the numbers of COVID cases are like in the States at the moment. Because, it's not like you might think because we're going into lockdown, we're having these massive outbreaks, but that's not the case. We had, I think, 19 cases yesterday in Victoria, and the government takes it very seriously over here. So that lockdowns happen when there are any cases, and they're just trying to, they call it a circuit breaker. They're trying to break the transmission path and get on top of it early. So we're not necessarily, there are no deaths from COVID. There have been a couple recently in Sydney, but we're not really experiencing a crippling outbreak. It's just a matter of, in our government's view, getting on top of it early and preventing it from becoming, a case where we're getting hundreds and hundreds of cases a day, which is what it was like in Melbourne last year.
Jono, is that hard? Is that hard, seeing that there are so many cases in other countries that are out living kind of normal lives? You've got the UK trying their open up, and from what I've read, that's not going too well, that they're looking at kind of reversing that. Obviously, the pressure coming from the people must be huge. When all different countries are doing such different things, it's like two parents having two different rules for kids. It's very hard to kind of keep the crowd in order when you've got that. And you put that in medical or sport, either. It's so hard when you've got so much sport going on across the world, and here we are with a few cases and still in very heavy lockdown. That must be tough.
Yeah, it's frustrating. We're getting dangerously close to a political debate here, I think. But no, seeing, for example, the Formula One Grand Prix being cancelled in Melbourne, it's being held everywhere around the world. But it's just, you're exactly right. It's different governments managing it differently around the world. And obviously the US have been a lot more, liberal with enabling people to do what they want to do. And in Australia, we're trying to really smother it at the sign of any outbreak. So, yeah, it's frustrating for me. I'm not sure I necessarily agree with statewide lockdowns in the manner that they've been occurring. It's, it's certainly, we managed to get on top of it last year in Melbourne when we were getting up to, I think it was about 750 cases a day at its peak. But yeah, it's when you think of the implications outside of the death rates and things like that, what it's doing for people's overall health, and it's really tough. It's a hard little conundrum to grapple with, I think. And yeah, while I don't necessarily agree with the lockdowns, it is, it's a real challenge, and I'm not sure exactly what the answer is, to be perfectly honest.
There's no book, is there? Good.
Yeah, you know what? I think obviously this is where we want to talk about hockey. I know we've gone to this. It's an important thing for all of us to understand. Aaron Kuzak's jumped on and basically said there's only 11 cases in Victoria, and I think we'll end on this because it is. Listen, I'm not a politician at all. Nobody had a rule book to figure this all out. Everybody can point fingers, and it's that person's fault or that person's fault. But guys, we've all been affected, and I think on the hockey scene, over on this side of the ocean, now that we've opened up, the one thing that I can say, when you see those kids, the smiles they have getting back on the ice, it's just been truly amazing. However, there has to be an asterisk. We have to be sure that we are in a position to, we went, guys, from 150 maybe a week ago. We've risen now to 350, and we haven't shut down yet. And I know you guys are in small counts, and I would even discount the whole American thing. The loss of life is incredible right now in the States, and it looks like we're just turning a blind eye. So listen, we've all got to battle through this. We will get through it, and we will be back hopefully to normal in the next, I would say, hopefully 6 months. And you guys, we're not going to make the difference. We can only take care of ourselves. Make sure you account for your own space, your own families, and do the right things. Wear the masks if you choose to be. You make your decision for yourself, but also you have to think about others. And I think some people tend to forget that. And my good buddies come on and he threw this one out there when we were talking about all the parts I needed. The one that he's suggesting is light liposuction. I hope, Jonathon, you don't do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, really, really nice kid. Hey, listen, Jonathon, obviously, being an athlete and watching this play itself out, obviously with rugby, you see what's going on. They're going into different parts and they're moving it around. And of course, it's because they have a ton of money behind them. We talked about that last week with Joey and Jamie. Do you think that, again, not to get you in any kind of trouble, you can just give us your quick thoughts on, because the AFL has so much money and so much control, they can do things like that. Whereas ice hockey, because it certainly doesn't have the numbers that would allow it to do it, is it okay for one major sport to continue on doing it when all the other ones are kind of shut the doors?
Well, I'm not surprised by it. The AFL is obviously a major employer and money generator for Australia, and even personally, I want to see the AFL. I want to see some sport. The Olympics has been such a nice sort of respite from the daily grind, I guess. And I think being a fully professional sport obviously helps. I mean, there's no way you could conceivably host an AIHL schedule with athletes who need to work, and there's the risk of being locked in a certain state when the circumstances change on a dime like they do. So they don't have anything else to really hold them back from being interstate and from it's their job. So it's very different for us. We are athletes and we love the game that we play, and we want to have some kind of competition going. But when it's an interstate competition, but it's not fully professional, and there's that risk of moving interstate and then having cases and a lockdown, and you can't get back, and if you do get back, you have to quarantine. It's not really feasible for us. But yeah, for the AFL, a bit of a different story, and obviously almost endless resources to enable these guys to be housed up for 2 weeks at a time and compete when they need to, and then move back into state whenever they're allowed. So it's totally different, but they're not immune to the challenges as well. I mean, there are rescheduled games all the time. There was meant to be a game in Tasmania this weekend, and Tasmania had one case. I think a guy from Sydney flew down, and all of a sudden Tassie are sort of snapping the borders shut to everybody. It's quite comical, really, how sort of seriously and how quickly it changes.
Yeah. Well, Hobart is on my bucket list. I've always said I want to go to Tasmania, so hopefully we get out of this and they'll allow me in it.
It's just beautiful.
I know I hear Louise Humphrey's a big supporter of our show, saying good words, obviously on the. Thank you very much. But here's a great question. We talked about the Olympics. You brought it up. I'll tell you what, Canada is just reeling. We've got the most incredible human on the planet, of course. He will be our flag bearer, Damian Warren. What an in the decathlon, just crushed it. And our female soccer team, in 130 years, it's the first time in a summer sport we have won a gold medal in a team competition, Canada. And I know that Australians have had an incredible Olympics. We had talked about it probably about, I would say, just before the Olympics were going to start. We all kind of thought, God, is this right? Is this wrong? I'll tell you what, I tip my hat off to Japan. They've done a great job. Obviously, certain things have happened that they did a great job, and there were people that were concerned. But I'll tell you what, it was phenomenal. What was your favorite Olympic moment over these last couple of weeks?
Oh, mate, I'm an absolute sucker for this. Look, I've watched all of it, and you're right. The decathlon was amazing. He's a specimen, that guy, the Canadian Warner, is it? I was shocked, and I have a newfound appreciation for the decathlon after seeing just how good they are at the respective events. I would have thought there'd be a bit more of a gap between the decathletes and the people who are going to compete in that specific event. But, you got guys running a 10-3 in the 100 and then going and jumping 2 meters 10. I mean, they would have been competitive in each of those events if they did the heats. It's insane. And then they're running 1,500 meters and doing a respectable time in that as well. So it's just nuts. But for me, being an Australian, I think it's hard to go past Titmus in the 2 and the 4 against Ledecky, just with the dominance that Ledecky had. And you know how celebrated she is over in the States. So to have a homegrown Aussie sort of, take the title off her in those shorter of the distance events, it was incredible. I love that.
Obviously, you hear that they went over and did a documentary in all the trial heats. The American film crew came over to Adelaide at the Marion Swim Centre, where they actually went off against Titmus was swimming. So there's a whole doco going about their rivalry, and obviously it'll come out after the event. But knowing that there's that much hype behind the upcoming and the champion on her way out, it was a great. Gouche and I kind of chatted about it before the race actually happened, and then Titmus coming and winning, and then Ledecky would want all that revenge coming back again, and just wasn't able to do it. And those old legs that they eventually catch up with you, and you've got that young buck coming after you.
Well, and we've got also Penny Oleziak here in Canada. She's a phenomenal swimmer too. So what a great thing to watch. The pool was fantastic, but I really think the surprising one for all of us, and you guys, I know you know soccer a little bit, watching that Canada game against the Swedish national team, the Swedes were a better team. Everybody thought, and I love it. The underdogs. We saw your basketball team win bronze. They had a chance to go further. Of course, I watched, as I'm with you, Jono, I'm watching a lot of sports. I haven't watched women's basketball. I watched a lot of the beach volleyball. But this one, tell me what sport this is.
The walking.
Oh my God, the 50-kilometer walk. I watched the whole thing. Like, what is wrong with me? And what was amazing is, I know you guys are going to bring some of the stories about Australians, but our Canadian ended up in a bronze medal, right? And I watched it more than I watched the marathon, because the way they look like a bunch of penguins, and when they get there, they look. Their legs and their hips are ready to fall off. And our guy, when he won the gold or the bronze medal, he was the guy in Rio that I guess elbowed somebody and he got disqualified. He would have won the bronze. So it's pretty cool to see how that all worked out. And the final part on it, I just wanted to say, watching our soccer team, with the penalty kicks, they went into a penalty kick situation. And, it's a pretty big net. And there's a lot of spots to hit. Both goaltenders stopped out of the 5 shot 3 times. And then our goaltender stops the Swedish girl in the extra time, which would have ended it. And our girl then scored. it was just truly amazing to watch that. And I think from all standpoint, a huge success for all Olympians that went over there from all countries, doing such a great time. I'd like to hear, Jonathon, other sports that you maybe watched that you don't normally watch.
Look, I've got to admit, I'm not a massive fan of the NBA. So Olympic basketball for me is something that I wouldn't regularly watch basketball. So I really enjoyed the Boomers' journey, seeing them come up against some pretty powerhouse nations. Obviously, they played the US in the semi. I really got behind that. But I'm a big fan of running, the distance running. You never really get to watch that. It's not, you don't get to see the World Championships and, on TV. So it's the one time every 4 years, or 5 in this case, where you can really watch the best runners in the world, and they're insane. I was watching Kipchoge in the marathon this morning. I mean, the splits he's putting up for 42 Ks, it's just I couldn't do it for 600 meters, and I'm a decent runner. I mean, he is just absolutely nuts. About 2 minutes 50 for a K over 42 Ks. It's just completely.
So Aaron Kuzak pipes in and says, "Think about this. We don't even drive 50 kilometers in a day at the moment, let alone walk like a car." Like the wheels are falling. They literally, in that walk, it looks like their whole bottom end's just going to explode. John, did you watch a sport that you generally didn't even think about? Like, obviously, I'm a massive diving fan. No, that's soccer. Is there a sport that you watched that you maybe didn't think about before?
Did I?
Well, first you, Sammy, and then you, Jonathon.
Well, I got into the table tennis. I kind of like Jonathon. I rated myself as a decent table tennis player. Tux and myself, we have an ongoing championship. There's a scoreboard in the shed, kind of thing. And I think I'm winning about 160 games to 140. So I've got a good lead on. And watching these guys and the angles they can get, the top spin, and just the rallies that you just think are going to be over and they're not. That was probably a highlight for me, that hand-eye coordination. When you're quite good at something and then you realize there's levels to this thing.
Well, I think, Jonathon, you may have that. I'm not sure, but in Germany, they had ping pong tables in our lounge, so that because of the eye-hand coordination, we would play beforehand, and we just smucked the ball a little bit. What these guys can do with the curls and at the speed they did, the Chinese, of course, won the gold medal. It was just absolutely amazing how it's just a little white ball, and these guys are being able to pick it almost off the floor. You've already kind of talked about the sport that you like. I want to ask you guys the question. First, you, Jonathon, what about a winter sport? What winter sport? And I can tell you right now, for me, it's skeleton and the luge. I just love it when they get on these things and, the skeleton, that's what you're going to end up being at the end of the race. Is there a winter sport that you think is pretty cool?
Well, look, I'm obviously biased. I mean, hockey's the obvious one. I went to Canada in 2010 to watch the Winter Olympics, and didn't really watch. What else did we see? Look, you're right. I was a big fan of the skeleton. I think that's even more insane than the luge. That's the one where they're face first. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just bonkers. Look, it could be anything. A half pipe. We've got Scotty James in the half pipe. He's usually really competitive. He was world champion. He didn't beat Shaun White, though, in the Olympics. But I reckon the half pipe's pretty sweet to watch.
Hey, Jonathon, you mentioned that you were in Vancouver 2010. I didn't meet you there. I wish I would have known you, because I was there too. And how warm it was. Like, honestly, we were in golf shirts and t-shirts, and they were literally, Jono, Sammy, they were literally bringing snow off the mountains to put on to the mountains where they were doing the ski. There was no snow. Like, we were there were full bloom of flowers in that. And in February.
Yeah, about 14 degrees in the city every day.
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
So let's, as we stay on the Olympic theme for a few minutes, Aaron Kuzak has asked that we've heard that the Brisbane Games are going to be held in 2032. I hope I'm still on the planet. I hope we're out of the lockdown by then so I can get over to Brizzy. He's asking, what sport do you think that's not in it obviously a lot of sports have been brought in over the years. And of course, now that they're looking for a younger demographic, I know they've got skateboarding now and they've got all these kind of extreme sports. Is there one sport right now, we'll start with you, Sam, that isn't in the summer games that should be? And you can't pick chess.
Yeah, that's fine. When you see kind of the sport rock climbing and you see the handball being an international Olympic sport, straight away I'm thinking we need a netball in there. It's a big Commonwealth sport. It's also an international sport. And then obviously a bit closer to my heart, you'd have to say T20 cricket or international cricket, another well-populated sport around the world. A lot of these other sports like your futsal and stuff, they're European sports. You've got Australia trying to compete with people who do it their entire year. So I believe those two sports are worthy of Guernsey.
Jonathon?
Yeah, I'm a traditionalist. I think I have this sort of theory that if the Olympics isn't the peak of your sport, then I don't know if I agree that it should be at the Olympics. So I'm a bit questionable about, things like golf. Golfers grow up dreaming of winning the Masters. They don't grow up and dream of winning an Olympic gold medal, although it's fun to watch and I'm a golf fan, so I'll tune into it. I think I'm old school. I want to see the running and the swimming and, these other, more, I guess, conventional Olympic sports. But again, for one that I'd want to see in there, there was talk when I was growing up. I mean, I didn't play ice hockey until I was about 18. I was an inline hockey guy. So growing up, I always wanted to see roller hockey in the Olympics. I think it was a trial sport for one of the Olympics way back in the day, but it never eventually got a look in. So I would have loved to see that. I think it's competitive enough on the world stage. I think, it's obviously big in the summer in Europe, and obviously USA have a really good team, and Canada often beat USA. So I think, there's a capacity for that to happen. There's enough competitiveness, and there's obviously, enough players to possibly get Australia into the comp as well.
Well, this year they've had some new sports, of course, karate, surfing, which is new introduction. Of course, sports climbing, skateboarding, as I mentioned earlier. It's kind of cool to watch some of these sports. And I even caught myself watching the rowing, watching these guys go from zero to the speed that they get rowing is just absolutely incredible. And the bike circuits, some of those are, they're not just fast, but they've got technique and strategy in it. I think that's probably one of the sports that I was really astounded on how dangerous it could be too.
I was a rower in high school, Gouche. You see one of the teams, they call it catching a crab, but that is dangerous when your oar gets caught in the water and the handle whips back, and it can really do some damage. So that happened in one of the finals, I want to say. I think it might have been the one where Australia were able to go and take the gold. So yeah, it's a hectic sport. It can be dangerous too.
Gouche, what would you see going to the Olympics?
I'd love to see wrestling, like the WWE, just to add a little bit of levity to it. Because when you really think about it, when we look at, you mentioned the traditionalists, I really believe we should, this was obviously in the Greece times of, gladiators and all the rest of the stuff. I think we got to keep it, but to continue on growing the games, and these things cost billions and billions of dollars. I don't even know what the numbers are going to be, Jonathon and Sam, of how much money the Japanese will lose on this particular Olympics. And that's why I think they went straight to Brisbane without a huge fanfare, because I think they're pricing themselves out. And then when you hear the rulings that the shorts aren't right, it's a pandemic, and here we are, even considering maybe throwing this team out of competition because their shorts aren't right. I think Scott Taylor said it best on our show today, talking with Taylor. It's run by a bunch of white old guys that just don't get what this Olympics truly are. It's allowing people the opportunity to show us their skill level at the highest and peakest moments of their life. Obviously, I'm sure you guys watch the 100 meters, the 200 meters. We've got Degrassi from Canada, who on the 200, I don't know if you watched him coming out around that corner, he was behind, and all of a sudden he just exploded, and here he wins the 200. And you obviously, Jono, you're mentioning Damian Warner, and I know I'm focusing on the Canadians because I've been watching so closely what he did. The most incredible athlete in the world right now. He's from London, Ontario, and I think that's what this sport is. It can be anywhere from anywhere around this globe that can come out and put their best out to us and entertain us, but also give us moments of forgiveness and forgetness right at this particular moment. And then we have to have I guess you want to call it the short date.
Yeah, I completely agree, mate.
All right, let's get on to hockey. Let's
Yes.
get back to hockey.
Yes.
Jonathon, what has been happening? How many times are you guys getting on the ice? Are you getting on the ice at all? Are there covert operations being run where we can get you on the ice? What's happening in Melbourne?
Let me know if you find a way. But no, we haven't. We were training once a week when we were able to, when there were no restrictions. But obviously that ended last week. So there's no hockey in the foreseeable future at the moment until at least this. And, as I mentioned before, when the lockdown does end, I think it's going to take another week or so before indoor sports are able to go ahead. So it's a bit longer of a wait for us. But look, it was looking good. We were getting into a good routine. We were enjoying training. We're in the gym before training every week on a Thursday, and obviously everyone's working out on their own time. But just a spanner in the works every few weeks, it seems. So the frustration builds.
Absolutely.
So I want to ask you a question, Jonathon, because that's happening here right now. Kids are getting to go to the rink. Guys that, like yourself, who are preparing for the upcoming season. Everybody thinks that we're going to be back at it September. Do you think there's going to be the situation where you just can't go out? We've been shut down for 18 months. You can't just turn the light switch on and these kids go out there and be the same. Are we going to have to, bringing them back slowly? Obviously, you can't go from 0 to 100. Do you feel that there's going to be a lull and coaches have to kind of coach differently because you can't expect your athletes all of a sudden just to come out of this, deep sleep and expect them to go at their highest level? Do you think there's going to be a transition there?
Yeah, 100%. And, for me personally, every time we get locked down, I try to get training on the track. I try to, run. I like running. So, but me being me, I'd always tend to go out too hard, and all of a sudden I've got issues with my hips and pelvis and shins and knees and all these common running injuries. So I'm probably not the guy to ask about tapering into a training program, but I know that's definitely going to be important. And as far as the youth level is concerned, mate, we're looking at some long-term damage here. Kids getting thrown in and out of sport every couple of months, and it really could. I can see it potentially killing their enjoyment for the sport. So I don't know. Maybe youth participation in sports is going to be something we're going to have to look at when we are able to emerge from this eventually.
Malcolm Sutherland, one of the Safer Sports ambassadors with Kerry and himself, he put out a video, I think it was last week, saying along those lines, a coach now needs to basically, when he gets his players, and men, female, it doesn't matter, when they come back in, it's almost going to have to treat like, kid gloves again, starting from the start, some fun kind of warm-ups, because the skill level's not going to be there. The physical level is not going to be there. The risk of injury is going to be higher. As you said, those trainings aren't going to be regimed as much, people not being able to get and do what they can. And just hearing it from his perspective and the way he puts down, there are going to be some coaches that are going to find that hard because they coach a certain way. I can do this, I can do that. So it's going to be a real interesting kind of transition from going from no to go. I'd love to know some stats out of that as to, what kind of injury rates we have, how quick can we progress? It's going to be, like you say, we don't have the book on these things for COVID, let alone getting back out of it. So we're rewriting the history as we go.
So Malcolm Sutherland actually talked about that, and I had an opportunity to talk to Todd Warner. You would not know the name, but played in the National Hockey League, won a silver medal in Lillehammer for Team Canada at the Olympics, and he's now coaching kids. And I had a chance to talk to him about he's coaching a junior team. So we're not talking, 12 and 13, 14-year-olds. He's dealing with 18, 19, 20-year-olds, and they had a staff meeting just last week, and that's exactly what they were talking about, Jonathon, exactly what you were saying. They're having to monitor each of their players in the gym, on the track, before they get to hockey, because they're using different techniques to get ready for hockey, but their bodies weren't ready for. Obviously, there's been a couple more injuries, and then they're saying they're going to have a training camp, and they're going to have it longer than usual, have the first 2 weeks just getting them back to skating and doing it in a very gradual way, and then actually start the training camp, because they don't want anybody to be only there for 3 weeks and sent home when they really haven't been able to, after 18 months get to skate. So I think that is going to be the norm, but I think we all know how excited we are to get back on the ice. So we are going to tend to want to go from that. It's like you were talking about golf. I used to be a pretty good golfer. I'd golf 50, 60 games a year. And then all of a sudden now I'm down to 5 a year. And I can't understand why after my 5th round, I'm not hitting, getting into the scratch level. Well, if you don't practice and you sit all winter and you get fat, of course it's going to be an issue, and you have to gradually go out and do it. Love to hear your perspective, Jonathon, about you yourself now. Obviously, you've talked about you've gone and you're trying to do different, you love running, so you're utilizing that. What else are you using psychologically? Is there something that you are, setting goals for yourself when you do come out of the pandemic that you can say, okay, listen, I'm going to get back on the ice. My goal this year, last year or the year before, I was here. Now I'm going to have these next 1 or 2 steps to get to another goal that you're setting.
It's really hard, Gouche. It is. I mean, we can't. You simply can't, set a goal for something that's so unsure. I mean, if we're able to get back on the ice this year consistently, then it would be to play a couple of games against the Mustangs and put in a good performance and a good show. But we need our reps. We're not NHL players. I mean, the product for us and, for us personally, we have these expectations of what we are capable of. But, when you're getting such limited opportunities to practice, you might get a few training sessions in, and then you're going to play a game in front of a big crowd, and you almost feel sorry for them because your legs just can't keep up with what you want to do. So it's hard to set goals. We don't know if we're going to be dealing with snap lockdowns next year, and we don't know whether vaccine's going to be a silver bullet for us, and it's just so uncertain. So to answer your question, no, I don't know how to set a goal for next year in terms of hockey. You got to look at what you can control, and if you set a goal for your training outside of hockey, if mind you, gyms are closed at the moment too, so you're really limited to just body weights and running, I guess. So I've set little goals along the way of what I want to achieve in for example, running, but you don't know. You don't know what you can do in the gym, and you don't know what you can do on the ice, because at the moment we're getting none of it.
Sam, just before you go with your wrap-up question, I want to ask you, Jonathon, what has been something you've done in these last 18 months of this wild and crazy ride that we've been on? It is going to be a movie. We know that. I'm thinking Bruce Willis is going to probably be the lead and I got this and take over like Armageddon. What's something that you've done through this pandemic that you never thought you would ever do? Is it like, obviously you're a very well-schooled guy, so you probably read a lot. I've actually read half a book, and I'm not a big reader, so I'm halfway through a book in 18 months. That's astonishing for me. Is there something that you never thought you would have done outside of your normal lifestyle pre-pandemic?
So many things. Watching golf, watching Formula One, and playing chess. There's 3.
Playing chess.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
Online chess you can.
when I get back to Australia, first I'm going to kick your butt in ping pong, Sammy, and cricket. We'll throw that one out because that's not even a sport. And then, Jonathon, you and I are going to do some chess. I love chess.
How good is it?
It's fantastic. I know where the rook goes now. I get what the queen's doing, and it's just, it's a crazy game. I love it. So book that, Jono. When I'm there in Melbourne, we're going to have a chess game. We'll have a chess off.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should make it a round robin sport: chess, golf, and table tennis.
You know what? We could have our own. We could have our own Australian Olympics.
Yeah, absolutely. Even I smell a golf day for the Ice Hockey Classic, where we have teams from Melbourne Ice, Melbourne Mustangs, Sydney, Adelaide, and we get them all, and we have the teams before going around there, and we have some kind of trophy up for grabs or something like that. But John, just in wrapping up, my question is, what has the coaching been like? Where is the mentoring coming from your leaders as to getting you in mindset, getting you guys as prepared as you can for this kind of stuff? What's coming out of the mentoring group that's helping you guys get through this? I mean, it's so foreign to us all. What's been coming out of some of the mentors that you can say that was vital to you getting through or helping?
Yeah, we talk about how hard it is for us. Imagine being not even a player and trying to organise a group of players to maybe play games or maybe not. I think the leadership and the management of the Melbourne Ice has been incredible, to be perfectly honest. Peter Hartshorn and Chris Yule was named our new head coach this year. They've been fantastic with what they've been able to do, and obviously being pretty limited in getting us together on the ice and trying to prepare us for a season. But the time they put in is amazing. So yeah, they've been great. But when we're not able to get together on the ice every week, it obviously makes it hard. But they're always there. They're always communicating with us outside of our time at the arena, and I'm really thankful for that. I think they've done an amazing job.
Gouche.
Well, it's always a pleasure having you on, Jonathon. I know that we've had you on a month ago or so, having Joey and Jamie also on. We get a really good perspective of what ice hockey means to you, and obviously what it means to the people. Like, I know it's a kind of I don't want to use the term a cult sport there, but it's not your traditional sport, but the passion that the players have. And the passion and the connection, especially in Melbourne with the Melbourne Ice and, of course, Melbourne Mustangs, that it's electric when that derby happens. And I can only say how more impactful it will be once we come out. So final thought to you is, and you mentioned it earlier, we're going to have to maybe look at our youth sports again. Up until our Canadian women won the gold in soccer, there had been some talk about the struggles that girls soccer were taking in our country. And we know that this gold medal will obviously, boost the interest in the sport. Are you concerned at all with ice hockey, where it's at as a non-traditional sport, a costly sport, that these kids for the last 18 months are, being disrupted, using a lot of this, being on the one thing that we're saying, hey, kids, you got to stay off it. But now we're throwing them on it because it's the only thing that can pass their time. Are you concerned at all that great movement that ice hockey was having? You guys had some great years. All of a sudden it stopped and kind of fallen off the map again. Are you any concerns on a lack of interest once you do get back?
Yeah, mate, I am. And I think you'd be naive to not be a bit worried about it, because, the way our league works, there's a lot of teams that don't make a lot of money, a lot of clubs that, they are on a razor thin edge and, financially, and you got to think what 2.5 years away from league competition is going to do for them. Yeah. So who's going to front up the money when it comes time to pay for those first airline tickets for an away game? It's scary. So, I know the league's was doing really well before the COVID situation emerged. So, we're leads to from here is anyone's guess. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see, and I'm hopeful that it'll be okay. But you got to think that a lot of clubs are going to be in trouble over the next year or so if we do get a national competition going again.
Well, Jonathon, with ambassadors like you and great hockey players like yourself, ice hockey players, I know for a fact that ice hockey in Australia are in good hands, and you will help make sure that the sport continues, as we will with our Ice Hockey Classic. We hope to be returning in July 2022. We're planning it. Hopefully we can do it. And if so, Jonathon, I know that you'll be a big part of our plan. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. You're not in the operating room. We have learned now you are not an official doctor. Thank you, Sam. But we know how important your job is. Thank you for all that you do, Jonathon, in helping us grow this great game of hockey, ice hockey.
Thanks a lot, guys. Always a pleasure.
Jono, if you want to catch that book, it's Green Eggs and Ham that Gouche is reading. He's halfway through.
It's actually the one I wrote. I've got halfway through the book I wrote.
He happens to have a copy of his book. I'm sorry, I don't have mine that I wrote back.
No. The only reason why I have it is on Tuesday night we start a show all about the book. It's ironic that I have it here, but as I was in break, I was trying to get a page read between it. Thanks, Jonathon.
Thanks a lot, Jones.
See you, Jono.
Cheers.
What a great guy. What a great perspective. Very articulate and a great hockey, a very good hockey player in his own right, but also one of the fan favorites. People just love to watch this kid play with his work ethics. Your thoughts on what we just heard?
What I picked up from today and from last week, Gouche, was I see three young men in the prime of their life really held back from what they want to be doing. You can hear there's that angst to just want to be doing more. They've got the reins pulled on them. They can't just be let loose, and you see the frustration. You can hear it in their voice talking about other sports being out and playing, and here we are talking about the Olympics being run, and they can't just get on the ice and go have a whack with their mates or their team or whatever. Yeah. So I sense the frustration big time from them, which has made Joey's point last week so much better when I came in saying, with the no fans in the Olympic stands, how do we do it? But those people have planned so long to get there, to show off their skills for that 4-year period. If we don't allow that to go ahead, then that's their career wasted. If it goes another couple of years, well, they become the old group and the young group comes through and takes it. So there's been some great points out of the three guys.
Yeah, and also, we one of the things that we didn't touch upon on the Olympics, the great things that came from on the playing field or on the floor or in the water, was the fact that Simone Biles, of course, went through her mental challenges, the U.S. Gymnast, and publicly opened up, and it gave us an opportunity to talk and understand that these young boys and these young men and women at the prime of their life are also going through times of toughness. And, we sometimes put athletes on a pedestal and think they're above the average person. They're not. They have the same feelings. They cry like us. They bleed like us. They put their pants on generally the same way. And so sometimes we just forget there's a mental side to this sport. And it was great for her to come out and actually show us that vulnerability and the ability to say, enough's enough. I need some help.
Well, normally they would have, their family and support crew traveling with them, being there in the stands, the support, and that's not there this time around. Yeah, so, looking up and having that safety net of those people behind you. I know it was like when my parents came to a match, it became the biggest match I was in just because they were there, let alone if it was a grand final or something, or God forbid, an Olympic medal you're going for. That would be a huge portion out of their psyche disturbed moving into their event.
Yeah. All right. Well, what a great show again. I think we have really enlightened people on the trials and tribulations for the athlete. I can't thank Jonathon enough for joining us. Also with Joey and Jamie last week, I think we really got a good perspective on where we lie. And of course, watching Aaron do his job right now on his show. It's so good that we're able to open up and talk about some of those things that guys just don't like talking about. So that's why, Mental Health Mondays with Chuck Basti have been such a big hit. Wellness Wednesdays with, of course, Pete Bombacci, and now adding the new concussed, understanding the invisible injury on Tuesday nights. That's really all the work of Terry Rivard. She has been after me for the last year. Gouche, we got to put this out on the network. So we've joined the Fired Up Network. We'll be working with them to bring that Tuesday night. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And of course, getting you on that a couple of times and getting some of the Australian doctors, obviously with the AFL situation and obviously the issues that you guys are having over there with concussion.
It's an important subject, Gooch, and you have the best supporting you, and we need that over here. We really do.
And we will get that. We will get that once we get on a flight again. Sam Trapolino, fantastic job, bud. I know we'll be talking over the next 24 hours. We've got a big project over there that we're working on, and you think you wake up in the morning one day and you think you've got trials and tribulations. Sammy's got the best of them. We got anybody do cement work. We need somebody to do cement work.
And we don't want people putting that concrete. So no Italian mafiosa.
You got it. Only legit businesses. Give us a call. Any grievances? Send to Val. All right, buddy. Thank you. Great night. We will see you next week on Gooch Live, Aussie style.
Thanks, Gooch. Good night, guys.
See you, buddy.